Hello, everybody. Hi, how are you guys doing? I'm hoping you're having a great Monday. Welcome back to my podcast. I am so excited to record this new episode. My last episode was about mpox and everything, and this episode will actually be a part two to my Kamala Harris episode because, child, this election is working on my last nerve. And the people who are supposed to upset me are not even upsetting me. It's the other people who aren't supposed to upset me that are upsetting me. So let's begin. Welcome to another episode of They Not Like Us. Child. You know, when I went to college and decided to major in political science, I felt like my identity as a Congolese American, an immigrant, or my multiculturalism just did not permit me to really love domestic politics, right? So I'm not like I focus my studies on foreign policies. So one of the prerequisites that I took was American domestic policies, and while I was sitting in that class and we're discussing, different theories, we're talking about different stuff, my brain just automatically was like, oh, okay. Although I'm interested in foreign policy and everything, you cannot really do foreign policy without understanding domestic policy, right? And then my brain just was like, oh, okay. So how does this domestic things translate to foreign policy, right? How does American domestic policies influences foreign policies? And because of that interest, right, into seeing how domestic policy influences foreign policy, I started liking my class. Because for me, like I was just thinking of going to like my international relation class, thinking about theories and all of that. But you cannot really do international politics if you don't understand domestic politics. So when I view the things that happens in the United States, I usually don't particularly like care is not the word, but I usually don't put a lot of emphasis to it solely as a domestic thing. I always try to look at the bigger picture, right? I always try to look at like what is the overall meaning of this in this globalized world, because America's elections are not like other elections. They're not. Other countries can have election that will have like significant global impact, but we don't think about it. Especially us Americans, we don't care about what's going on in France. Only political nerds like me will want to know, the implications of what's going on in France or Belgium or whatnot, right? But the everyday American doesn't really care about what's going on in Belgium, right? We had a president who called Belgium a city. Yeah, try to defend that while doing your master's in Belgium. Lord, that was not fun. But everyday Americans do not care. And Americans have this privilege to not care about other people's politics, right? They don't care about other domestic politics or its influences on global policies. They don't care. They don't have to worry about that. But other people do care about American politics. For better or for worse, America is the hegemon, right? So the hegemon in political science just means like the leader, right? You hear this term so many times, the leader of the free world. The White House is the most important house in the world. They don't say one of the most important, no, they say the most important house in the world. Like the president of the United States, he's the leader of the free world, right? So of course people have to care. Of course people have to care about American politics. That is why the crap that is happening right now is so frustrating. It is so frustrating. Like Americans are not realizing how they're being a laughing stock right now. This is more frustrating than 2016. This is very frustrating because you have two candidates. One is a multicultural candidate. The other one is a multicultural candidate but for a different reason, right? He's multicultural between white and orange, but for, let's not go there, right? But you have one who's multicultural and one is for a better term, a white man, right? And these two candidates are coming with ideas and policies that neither of them are strong in. Neither of them are strong in. Because they are not strong in it, we have to go to the low-hanging fruits. And the people who are driving the low-hanging fruits narrative are the people who will lose the most if one candidate win over the other. Now, I have to be neutral. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. But let's discuss this race debate, right? Kamala Harris is not black. Why is that even a thing? How did race become a factor into presidential elections? She's not black, okay, but is she American? Is she American? Because the Constitution states in order to run for the presidency, you have to be an American citizen. Not naturalized, but born citizen. The only difference between Americans among the population who are Americans are those who can run for president and those who cannot. I am as American as the next person, but the only difference between you and I is I cannot run for president because I wasn't born on American soil. But Kamala Harris was. Regardless of her race, is she an American? Why can't we start there? Why can't we start there? How about, since when is race a factor in running for elections? I'm trying to understand that part. Since when? Of course, we had one ruling race that always used to be candidates. But the world is changing. The American demographic is changing. More people are multicultural. So it is inevitable that with more people being more multicultural and working in spaces that they did not work in before, we might have a multicultural candidate. Like, at least with Obama, they were claiming he was an American. Because some people did not know that Hawaii was an American state. You see, at least with that argument, although it was stupid, at least with that argument, they were talking about citizenship. But here we're talking about race. So I'm confused. Asian Americans cannot run for president? Indian Americans cannot run for president? Like, why did that become a thing? Why did that become a thing? Is she telling people vote for me because I'm black? Why is that a thing? Why is that a thing? Seriously. Let's think about this. We're having an American presidential elections. Y'all remember when Ted Cruz was running for the presidency and Trump came at his nationality because he was actually born in Canada? That was even, I would give that even more validity than this debate that we're having about, oh, she's not black. I heard she's not black. What is that even a thing? Yes, she's Indian. Fine. Let's satisfy your need that she's Indian. So are you saying she cannot run for president because she's Indian? Or is it that people are trying to justify their dislike of her to her race? Because when white people were running, when it was only 2 white candidates, we were not talking about their race, right? It was inevitable. We were looking at their policies and how their policies affected us. Even within the black communities, right? If I vote for a Democrat, is that going to help me? Or if I vote for a Republican, is that going to help me? That's how we were evaluating like our candidates. But now you're hearing like, well, you know, she's not a black woman. Well, she's... Fool! What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? What is her policies? What is her policies? Now, because of these low-hanging fruits, we don't really know a lot of policies. We've heard of Project 25, and even Project 25, Trump is not the one drafting it. He's just going to be the one to enact it, right? So most people, and then so it's working for the Republicans to have these, you know, distractions so that when they get voted in, or if they get voted in, they can just enact the policies that they wanted to enact in the first place, right? So this is working in favor of Trump, regardless of how you feel about him or how stupid he's being. This is working in his favor, because the distraction allows him to work in silence with his team to enact Project 2025. But here's where this is frustrating from a foreign policy perspective, right? I started this podcast by saying we are the hegemon. Whatever we do, people watch and people follow. My first election was Barack Obama's election. And I remembered how everybody was proud, right? Even if you weren't black, even if you weren't American, the fact that there was somebody who is different than the rest make it in a country like America gave people hope. Some Africans were like, oh yeah, his daddy is African, so you know, he's gonna have a great relationship with Africans. And then this fool showed us that, you know, his mama raised him and it wasn't our African ass who raised him. So, you know, so whenever we do this, like, of course we want to relate and everything, have like, you know, relate to our leaders and everything. But as somebody who studied politics, I can tell you, not a lot of people relate to their leaders. They don't. They really don't, right? The European leadership do not have anything in common with the everyday French or Belgian, nothing in common. Okay? So this idea of trying to relate is very like unique to American system, I would say. Because, you know, like, the Europeans have like parliament, and their elections are very different and everything. So the relatability is it's a very like interesting concept, right? And the thing that's annoying is that when we act like that, we lose our authority globally. When Trump won in 2016, we saw a rise in populist movements and conservative leaders winning election around the world. You had that idiot from Brazil, what's his name? Bolsonaro. You had Erdogan in Turkey, the Bulgarian guy, and we saw a rise in populist movements. Germany is about to have its first right-wing party in control since the last one that was in control led to World War II. Okay, let's just say they led to, to be honest, France also had a part in why we had World War II, but we're not going to go there, right? So they're having Germany may see its first conservative leadership since the last guy. So our election have consequences. And when we're doing this thing about identity politics, let me just give you an example of how Americans' identity politics played around in other countries, right? I had an episode on this podcast that talked about the Congolese election. And last election was between a guy who was very qualified, but is biracial. And the other candidate, who is the actual president, he had this slogan, de père et de mère, right? So I'm Congolese. Both my parents are Congolese. I have Congolese blood. Even though he is allegedly, some will say also me, but whatever. I'm trying to have good relationship with the president, but incompetent. We had a chance to elect a competent president who could change the Congo for the better. But we refused to elect him because we questioned his Congolese identity. People started talking about he doesn't speak Lingala. And I've said this before, Lingala is not the only language spoken in the Congo. Lingala is only spoken in Kinshasa and in the Ngala tribe. Now all Congolese speak Lingala. It's not a requirement for all Congolese to speak Lingala. So using those little stupidity to disqualify someone who is overqualified and who had a proven track record of changing his province and wanting to do this for the whole country because of his identity, guess where they got that from? Guess the argument that people were making. They were making the American argument. They were making the argument that y'all are making now. Remember when they were questioning Obama about his, the legitimacy of his background? So why can't we question the legitimacy of this guy's background? Remember, look at how Americans fought to claim back their country in electing Trump, because they felt like only natural American will make America great again. They used that. And Americans, politicians, like to go to countries like the Congo and tell them, you should be like us. This is how we were able to develop our country. This is what development looked like. You want to be the rich, powerful country? Be like us. Look at us. We have democracy. Look at us. We elect people who are born in America. We make sure that anyone who's going to run for president is born in America. And here's the other part of that impact, right? When we do these stupid culture wars, America cannot blame Russia for cultural wars. You want to know what Vladimir Putin always says when they talk to him about human rights? Well, look at in America. Look at the Black Lives Movement. They are not even clean. They don't have clean hands. So how can they talk to us? Now, some of you might hear this and be like, why should we care? You should care because the world is always watching. Regardless of what you think, not only does the world depend on us, but we also depend on the world. When you think of the food you eat, when you think of economy, when you think of gas prices, those are bilateral and multilateral deals that get made. American politics, America does not have the luxury to have a politics for itself. No. American politics is interconnected with different countries, with different regimes. And America always fights to keep its place as the number one country in the world. So we cannot afford to be stupid. We cannot afford to have stupid arguments. Because not only are we sowing a seed for discontent in our soil, we are sowing a seed for a lot of discontent throughout the world. Here's why Americans need to be more educated about our election processes. We just don't have elections for us. We don't have that luxury to have elections for us. We do not have the luxury to have elections for us. Depending on who you vote has global implications. That is true of America more than any country in the world. Because if you vote one way, then if there's a war, if there's a natural disaster in another country, it means that, oh yeah, America's going to intervene. And if you vote another way, oh, because America only cares about itself, then we will not intervene. And then when there's a global pandemic, we get affected. Y'all, please, 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 let's go back to having policy debates. These low-hanging fruit debates, not only are they stupid or harmful to the individual, they have greater impact, and people that you don't know suffer the most. So, like I said, I'm not telling you who to vote for, but please, the world is watching us. I was actually in Belgium when Joe Biden won, right? And I was visiting Liège when it was announced that they won. And I remember, like, I was sitting, like, on the window seat and everything. And as we were passing, and this is how I found out that Kamala won, right? And when we were going to Brussels, all the buildings were illuminated with American flags. And that's when I knew that Joe Biden had won. And when I checked on my phone, I was like, oh yeah, Joe Biden won the presidency. I'm not saying that one party is better than the other. I'm just saying that when we're running elections, especially since as American leaders, we go around the world touting our election processes, touting our democracy processes, we have greater responsibility. Heavier is the head that wears the crown. we have greater responsibility. So regardless who's listening to this, regardless how you're gonna vote this election, please, 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 please be cautious in what you say and how you spread misinformation, because those little discord have bigger implications. I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye. Oh, I forget. I never get to do this because I always record and then I leave and everything. But please like, comment, share. Those who are on YouTube, subscribe to more of my rantings. And thank you so much for always being here. I appreciate you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And don't forget to check out my travel blog. Bye, y'all.